Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so I hope you enjoy.
Number 10. Mulberry Harbours. In what became famously known as D-Day, 156,000 Allied troops stormed the coast of Normandy, France, on June 6, 1944, on a mission to free the country from Nazi control. It was the largest seaborne invasion in recorded history. The Allies installed portable harbours at Omaha and Gold Beach to facilitate the rapid offloading of supplies, troops and vehicles. Known as Mulberry Harbours, these structures were developed by the British military and towed across the English Channel in sections. They were assembled at their respective destinations. Each harbour consisted of steel roadways that floated on steel and concrete pontoons. The original plan was to use them for 3 months, but the harbour at Gold Beach, known as Mulberry Harbour B or Port Winston, ended up being used for 10 months. It unloaded as much as 18,000 tons of supplies daily. The harbour's remnants can still be seen today, making them a fascinating remnant of a chaotic period of modern history. Mulberry Harbour A had a much shorter lifespan. It was only partially built when it was severely damaged in a storm, and it was abandoned the same month the harbours were put in place after barely being used. Number 9. Bunker inside a Roman fort. One of the best preserved Roman forts in Britain can be found in the Channel Islands at Alderney Nunnery. It was built during the 4th century and went on to serve as a fort and barracks during medieval times, before ultimately becoming a Nazi bunker during World War II. The site's history is just now coming to light, even though excavations began during the 1930s. Archaeologists recently confirmed their long-held suspicions that the site dates back to the Roman era. They determined that it was probably built shortly before the empire collapsed. At the time, the Romans were probably in a panic as they scrambled to protect their territory against invaders. The site's 10-foot-thick, 3-meter walls made it ideal for military use even 1,500 years after it was built. When the Germans took control of the Channel Islands in 1940, they evicted the entire population. They then built fortifications, bunkers, tunnels, and 2 forced labor and concentration camps in the region. Excavations are ongoing. Archaeologists recently unearthed several features that the Nazis implemented after they seized the islands, including buildings and drains. Evidence shows that the Germans installed a bunker within the walls of the Roman fort. They left one area alone completely, however. Known as the Sun Room, it may contain important details about what happened to the site after the Roman Empire collapsed. Experts have started to wonder if there was once a convent on the property. It'll take them some time to figure it out as they continue to examine the history behind the jumbled mass of artifacts and buildings at the site. Number 8. An unmarked soldier's grave and sunken airplane. In late September 1944, the Allies launched Operation Market Garden, which sought to free the Netherlands from Nazi control and encroach on northern Germany. Thousands of paratroopers landed on key bridges and liberated several parts of the country. Somewhere between 15,000 and 17,000 soldiers died during the mission. While searching a field recently in the municipality of Best, a Dutch treasure hunter's equipment detected ammunition and a military tag belonging to a German soldier who was buried in an unmarked grave. His remains were found at the bottom of a foxhole, but there were no other bodies or military equipment nearby. The Salvage and Identification Service of the Royal Netherlands Army is investigating the case and may be able to determine who the soldier was by his identification tag. The discovery came just days after news broke that an amateur diver named Mark Sarrazin had found a World War II-era plane at the bottom of Lake Simon in Quebec. Police told the local press that Sarrazin had captured images of an object that could resemble an airplane. The Canadian Army also got involved in the investigation. Sarrazin claimed that he saw bodies and kerosene barrels on the plane and that he hit the propeller. He was unable to share images and footage of the discovery while the authorities worked to confirm it. They haven't yet announced whether Sarrazin's suspicions about it being a World War II-era plane are correct. What would you do if you made this kind of discovery while diving? Tell me in the comments below. Number 7. SS St. Christopher. Originally named the HMS Justice, the SS St. Christopher is a 165-foot-long, 50 meters rescue tug that was built for the US Navy in 1943. The Americans never actually used the wooden vessel. Instead, it fell into the hands of the British Royal Navy as part of the Lend-Lease Act, which provided food, oil, and military equipment to US allies. The SS St. Christopher was reportedly used during the Allied invasion of Normandy, better known as D-Day, on June 6, 1944. After the war ended, it was returned to the US Navy, which then sold it to a private buyer. The boat ran aground during the 1950s and encountered engine and rudder problems. It was grounded at Beagle Channel in Ushuaia at the southernmost tip of Argentina. Nicknamed the End of the World, the area is famous as the world's southernmost city. The St. Christopher lies partially submerged in exactly the same spot where it was left nearly 65 years ago. Since then, it's become a tourist attraction. It's lit up at night, but nobody is allowed to actually board the heavily damaged boat, which looks like it could finish sinking into the water at any moment. Number 6. A hidden tank. Back in 2015, police in Kiel, Germany received a tip about a local resident having a cache of Nazi weapons in his basement. The 84-year-old man's illicit hoard had been discovered during a previous search for stolen Nazi artwork. Authorities found dozens of rifles and machine guns, over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and a 40-ton Panther tank inside the man's home. They also seized a torpedo and an anti-aircraft cannon. It took a group of 20 soldiers 9 hours to get the tank out of the house. Germany's War Weapons Control Act regulates the manufacture, sale, and transport of weapons of war. Whether or not the elderly collector violated the law depended largely on how operational the weapons were. The man claimed that the tank was just scrap metal that he bought in England, and his lawyers argued that the items weren't functional, describing them as demilitarized historical museum objects. The court ruled that the man had broken the law and gave him a suspended sentence of 10 months. In the meantime, they've given him 2 years to find a museum that's willing to take the tank and the anti-aircraft cannon. He was also ordered to pay a fine of 250,000 euros, $297,000. How do you think this man managed to keep an entire horde of Nazi weapons hidden from authorities for so long? What do you think of collecting items like these? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well. Number 5. A Japanese bomb in an American yard. Missouri resident Pamela Lovett was gardening in her backyard last year when she noticed a rusty, mud-covered object in the ground. She took it inside, and her husband, Sam Coffey, washed it off and began scraping away at it with a knife to figure out what it was. Lovett noticed Japanese writing on the object and immediately yelled at Coffey to stop what he was doing because he might have a bomb in his hands. Using Google Lens, the couple confirmed their suspicions. They called their local sheriff's office, who arrived at the scene along with Air Force personnel and employees from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF. Lovett and Coffey waited outside while the authorities set up a perimeter and investigated the scene. They determined that the bomb was still live and that it had a 500-foot, 152.4 meters blast range. The St. Louis Regional Bomb and Arson Unit removed the weapon without incident while reminding the couple how lucky they were not to be harmed or killed. The pair posted the news on social media, and it went viral. In the meantime, the bomb was detonated in a controlled explosion at a nearby Air Force base. Nobody knows how the Japanese weapon ended up in someone's yard in the United States, and there's a good chance we'll never find out. How do you think it got there? Number 4. Pilot's uniform. During a home clear-out in East Staffordshire, England, workers discovered a Royal Air Force pilot's uniform wrapped in a newspaper dating back to 1951. They found it under the bed of a man who had recently died, leading experts to believe that the uniform belonged to him or someone in his family. It was given to Hanson's auctioneers, where experts determined that it was a type of uniform that pilots wore until 1941, and that ground staff wore until 1943. The suit had a 3-blade emblem on the sleeve, indicating that the person who wore it was a senior airman. Auctioneer Charles Hanson likened the discovery to finding an unopened Christmas present from a forgotten era. He said that the uniform was still in good condition and perfectly wearable. The newspaper that it was wrapped in was also telling of the era. It included ads for pianos for sale, dance classes, and a motorbike. There's also an article titled, "What the Boss Looks For in the Ideal Secretary." It cautions women against wearing red nail polish and advises them to know which biscuits to serve with tea. The uniform was slated to be auctioned off in September for somewhere between £200 and £300. Number 3. SS Bloody Marsh. 78 years ago, on July 2, 1943, a German U-boat fired a torpedo and struck an oil tanker called the SS Bloody Marsh, roughly 100 miles off the South Carolina coast. The ship was hit during its maiden voyage while carrying nearly 5 million gallons of oil from New York to Houston. 3 crew members died. Everyone else scrambled for life rafts. They were lucky enough to escape by the time a second torpedo struck the ship, breaking it in two and causing it to sink rapidly. Finding the wreck was important to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which harbored concerns that the Bloody Marsh could be leaking oil and added it to their potentially polluting wrecks list. A team of scientists tried but failed to find it during the agency's 2019 Windows to the Deep expedition, when they investigated a possible target and instead encountered an underwater rock outcrop. They had better luck last year, 2021, and they located a sunken ship near some oil slicks that were identified in satellite images. The team found the wreck using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, which captured footage of a corroded vessel covered in debris. Based on the damage to the ship, all signs point toward it being the Bloody Marsh. It also appears to have been built in a style that was customary during the early 1940s. Parts of the ship remain missing, including the bow and some of the cargo tanks, even after the team searched the surrounding area. They didn't see any oil leaking from the vessel, but it's possible that leaks happen intermittently as the wreck corrodes, according to NOAA scientist Mike Brennan. He pointed out that the ship's hull appears relatively intact and that it's not in danger of imminently failing catastrophically. Brennan also said that he is confident that the wreck is the Bloody Marsh and called for future exploration to hopefully find the missing bow. Number 2. Enigma Machine. The Nazis sent and received secret messages using a device called an Enigma cipher machine. Hundreds of thousands of them were produced, but only a few hundred are known to still exist. Shortly before the Germans surrendered in 1945, 50 U-boat crews were ordered to destroy their encryption devices and scuttle their vessels off the Danish coast in Gelting Bay. While searching for discarded fishing nets in the area last year, a team of divers discovered what they initially thought was a typewriter. Underwater archaeologist Florian Huber soon realized that the device was of much greater historical significance. In fact, he would later tell reporters that it was the most exciting discovery of his career. The machine was probably thrown overboard as part of the effort to keep it from falling into Allied hands, which resulted in 200 German submarines being sunk into the Baltic and North Seas. Enigma machines are known to sell at auction for tens of thousands of euros each. They were used for writing what's known as the Enigma Code, which was cracked by a team of British cryptographers led by Alan Turing. Number 1. Nazi Horde. While renovating his aunt's home in Hagen, Germany last year, a man named Sebastian Yurtseven discovered a collection of Nazi artifacts hidden in the wall. It contained documents about the National Socialist People's Welfare Organization, a branch of the Nazi Party that evacuated children to rural areas and distributed food and gas masks to civilians. The agency also ran a clothing donation program and provided vaccinations, exams, and other medical care to those who needed it. It boasted an estimated 17 million members by 1943. Yurtsevens' family didn't yet own the home, which served as the NSV headquarters. Historians believe that someone hid the trove of paperwork as American troops advanced on Hagen in 1945. Some of the documents date as far back as 1928. There are few surviving original sources on the NSV, making the discovery especially useful for learning about the organization's inner workings. It was dissolved after Germany's defeat under a policy known as Law No. 2, which was implemented by the Allies. The Yurtseven family bought the house during the 1960s. They had no knowledge of its past affiliation with the Nazi Party. Staff from the Hagen City Archives took the items for further study, with plans to eventually display them in a local museum. What would you do if you discovered a trove of documents associated with Nazi government or social movements hidden in your walls? That's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time, where we'll cover more awesome historical content.